or present here.
All right, we will not open public hearing and will instead go to, do you want to put off the approval of minutes or whatever you like, whatever's better for you? Let's invite staff to present on the Smithfield project in that case. There was none.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jonathan Wu, Assistant Engineer for the City of Half Moon Bay. I'm also here with Maz Barzaginia, Public Works Director and City Engineer for the city. Melanie Reynolds, our Landscape Architect. Lorraine Tu, our Civil Design Engineer, and Christy Bascom, our planner for the project, and she'll be providing the presentation. We want to thank you for your time and allowing us to present you the Smithfield Master Plan update and project update as well. So, Christy, go ahead, take it away.
Okay. Thanks, Jonathan. Good evening, Commissioners. I'll be providing some background information on the Smithfield Park, the facilities master plan, and the master planning process. So basically, we'll go over the project background, provide some information on the existing conditions at the Smithfield Park site, and then talk about the concept park plan that has been developed by the design team, who Jonathan introduced and who will be here available to answer questions after the presentation's over. We're looking to receive Planning Commission feedback on the park design, specifically as it relates to the local coastal plan, local coastal land use plan, as well as any environmental considerations that we need to take into account as it relates to the design. So Smithfield Park is a 29 plus acre site located off Highway 1 at the western terminus of Wave Crest Road. It has been in operation as ball fields, Little League ball fields, essentially since the 1960s. It was built by developer L.C. Smith, who acquired the property. He leased a portion of the land back to the city and gave 6 acres to the local Little League Association at the time to develop a baseball park complex, which you can see here. In 2011, a 200-acre site that encompassed the fields was sold to Peninsula Open Space Trust, and under Post's ownership, the city was able to continue using the 29-acre park site. And then in 2012, the city acquired the park site from Post. You can see the couple of pictures here, what it looked like in the 60s when it was privately owned, and then what it looks like today as the public park. So the park started fairly organically, expanded over time to include the ball facilities, a dog park, horseshoe pits, picnic tables, other baseball support facilities, and a parking area. The 4th and 5th ball fields were added in the late 80s. So in 2019, the city adopted the Parks Master Plan, which envisioned several different improvements for Smithfield Park, improving the layout of the fields to accommodate a practice space for soccer. Paving the parking lot was also intended in the Parks Master Plan, installing more efficient and effective irrigation, updating the field lighting, as well as formalizing the connection to the coastal trail. So in 2021, a potential donor was identified for funding who would help pay for the first phase of improvements at Smithfield Park. The City Council then authorized the preparation of the facilities master plan, and community outreach and engagement began at that time. Rolling over into 2022, where community group discussions continued, engagement with different user groups, as well as community workshops to inform the concept plan that has been developed. So the City Council accepted the facilities master plan in 2022 and authorized the filing of a coastal development permit application that would cover the ultimate park build-out. So this year, in 23, the preferred park plan has been further refined. The technical studies have been underway, a biological resource assessment, wetland delineation, a tree survey, as well as an assessment of cultural and historic resources on site. Tribal consultation has taken place, and now the design drawings and CEQA documentation are underway. So the existing Smithfield Park site is made up of, again, the 5 ball fields, one of them being kind of a multi-use recreational field, dog park, horseshoe pit, the coastal trail connection, and then a snack shack and restroom buildings along with the gravel parking lot. These are photos of the existing conditions, just to give you a little bit of flavor of what the park looks like. These are courtesy of SWCA environmental consultants. The pictures came out of one of their project reports that they prepared. You can see the enclosed dog park there, the horseshoe pit, the park entry drive off Wavecrest, and what it looks like when you first come into the park. Batting cages, storage, concessions and restrooms, and then kind of your typical baseball field, dugout, and typical backstop. Now, when the design team was looking at the different concept plans for Smithfield, there were a few different site constraints that needed to be kept in mind. One of those being the buildings that exist on the site, some former U.S. Air Force military buildings that are right when you come into the park off to the right-hand side. So it's a former radar station facility that was active during World War II, deactivated in the late 40s, early 50s. And SWCA did an environmental, cultural resources, and historical resources assessment to determine if the buildings met any of the qualifications, either at the state or local level, to be considered historic resources. The buildings do not, so from a CEQA and environmental perspective, they are not historic resources, but this is something that needed to be taken into consideration when the park plan was put together. Another site constraint that was looked at was the existing trees on site. So there was a tree survey completed in January of this year, and then at that point, all trees that had a trunk diameter of 1.5 inches or greater were examined. They were rated for their tree health, structure, and just overall general conditions and general health. In the study area that's shown here, and you can see each of the little green dots is a tree. So they're clustered in the eastern portion of Smithfield Park, but there are also some that were included in the survey that are to the south of the park site. There are 231 trees that were in the study area, comprised of Monterey cypress, Monterey pine, some eucalyptus, some acacia trees, and a single arroyo willow, which is actually the only tree that is native to this portion of San Mateo County. Of all the trees, 231, 138 of them are considered heritage trees just due to their size. And a heritage tree would be anyone that has a trunk diameter of over 12 inches, any species except eucalyptus. So a majority of the trees will stay with the park concept plan as it's developed. You can see in pink there is where the hardscape is overlaid with where the tree locations are. There are a few that are proposed to be removed as part of the construction of the parking lot, but a large portion of them kind of clustered over there will remain. Another issue that's a site constraint and something that the design team needed to examine as part of the development is wetland areas that proliferate on the site. So SWCA did a site visit in November of 22, so last year, examined the entire proposed development area for the park, along with a 100-foot buffer around that. Looking for any wetlands of note. There are, as you can see, they really kind of cover the project perimeter, and there are a couple spots that show up, and you can see there's kind of a little finger of wetland area that comes into the park site near the horseshoe pits, and then another small spot that comes in to where the coastal trail access point is. The Army Corps of Engineers has confirmed that none of the wetlands are jurisdictional, and the local coastal land use plan allows for existing developed areas that are within an environmentally sensitive habitat area to remain as long as they don't intensify. So that's an issue that the design team and staff were looking at when the park plans were developed. So the components of the park enhancements are several. There's mainly improvements to existing facilities, along with for instance, the parking lot exists there now. It's currently a gravel lot that will propose to be paved. Upgrading the existing ball fields, lighting on Field 3, a new central pathway from the parking lot to each field, a new entry node for the coastal trail, concessions, restroom building, picnic areas, a new dog park, and new nature trails. And that is all shown in the concept park plan that's been developed here. Again, the ball fields are staying primarily in the same place. A lot of the new additions are over on the eastern side of the park, where the nature trail is a new small dog park and large dog park. One thing I will point out that the design team was very careful about is where the existing wetlands encroach into the park area, adjacent to the horseshoe pits. Those improvements are being removed and replaced with a raised boardwalk that connects the picnic area to the playground area. So trying to be very conscientious of the wetlands near the site and making sure that any features that are nearby are designed as sensitively as possible. Field 3 is expanded. As you can see here, it's currently primarily a baseball field, but it is proposed to be enlarged a bit and be able to accommodate other sports. There's room for a soccer practice field in there. And the paved parking area will expand the parking opportunities of the park. There's currently an allowance for 129 spaces in the gravel lot, and 177 paved spaces are proposed, which will include 9 accessible stalls that don't exist now. So the park will be developed in phases, essentially. We're looking at and presenting tonight the concept park plan at its ultimate build-out, but it will take time to accomplish that, and it will be built over time. The first phase of the park will be the parking area, the parking lot, and the maintenance road that goes up kind of the central spine here at the park. The second phase would be the dog park, play area, picnic areas, and the nature trail, so that orange phase there. Third being the improvements to ball fields 1, 2, 4, and 5. And then the last phase being the improvements to the multi-use field, Field 3. At this exact moment, there's no specific time frame for construction of the park improvements. However, we do note that the parking lot and the accompanying water line extension will be the first projects that will be done. The design and policy considerations were many for this project. The design team spoke with a lot of different user groups and wanted to make sure that the design matched what the user needs were to the greatest degree possible, but also aligned with the park's master plan. Another important consideration was providing adequate parking, especially during the peak use periods when everything's going on at the park. So providing sufficient parking while still being able to maintain the fields in their current location and really taking advantage of the existing infrastructure that was there. So that was an important design consideration. An important design and policy consideration was restricting any further encroachment into the wetland areas and the wetland buffer areas than from what currently exists. So that was a constraint and an opportunity, and something that the design team was real sensitive to. Another important design consideration was minimizing any lighting impacts from Field 3 onto any adjacent users or areas. So making sure that the new lighting is dark sky compatible and minimizing any spillover there. Stormwater quality is a big issue that the design team was real considerate of, making sure that the site grading and drainage is in line with the best water quality practices and stormwater management techniques. Of course, tree and building removal that we talked about previously. Important to take a look at the trees that are ideal to retain, making sure that that can be done, recognizing that some mature trees were going to need to be removed as part of the project. And then making sure that any architecture planned for the concession buildings, the restroom buildings, storage, are simple, functional, low-rise, and kind of in keeping with the design for Smithfield Park. So that concludes the presentation part of this. Where staff and technical consultants are here to answer any questions. We're primarily looking for commission feedback on this important park design issues and policy considerations and environmental considerations that we haven't covered so far. So thank you.
Thank you. Given the late hour, I'd like to go to public comment and ask commissioners to hold clarifying questions for a few minutes.
I see none in person, and I see one hand raised. So I will let them talk. It's Mike Ferreira, and there you go.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing this. I wasn't quite ready to speak, but I will. I have to say that I watched the Planning Commission hearing, and I think it was on the parks element or study or plan. And what I heard were 4 planning commissioners say, move it. Take it somewhere else. It's too wet. We need to find a new place for the ball fields. But what we appear to be doing here now is regarding all the existing ball fields as somehow immune from any such thinking. I'm not fully understanding how. And I also don't understand whether we are still looking for artificial ball fields or not. And I can't for the life of me figure out how we're going to deal with the drainage. Because if you look at photos, you see the ball fields completely surrounded by wetlands. So where do the drain pipes go? And where do they get to? And is the drainage all going to go onto other people's property? It's complicated. I do know that during the Wavecrest Village process, there was a large veterans organization that objected to having the buildings removed. And at that time, those buildings were surrounded by wetlands that have since been filled. I don't have to take my word for it. I'll give you my photos from 2004. So there are questions, things to be resolved. I would wonder if we've looked at historic overhead airplane photos to determine what was there under the original CDPs and whether we need to fix that in terms of what's entitled or not. So there are a lot of questions I have. I probably would rather have heard more presentation, but I guess we have a process that we can all go forward with. I like ball fields for the kids. I would like to have them have dry fields. There's a whole lot of controversy from a health standpoint regarding artificial fields. And I would hope that that's being considered at some area of the Half Moon Bay polity. And it's an interesting challenge, and I understand that it's difficult for the consultants to work through all this stuff, but I think there's quite a bit yet to work through. And so That'll be my comment for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
I have one more online, Hillary.
Hi, this is Hillary. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm a Parks and Rec commissioner, but I also just tonight am speaking on behalf of myself. I have, though, as a commissioner, looked at this project a fair amount, and as a result of spending time looking at this, just have as a citizen some feedback, which is that I think it's great that, assuming that all of the environmental stuff checks out, that we can move forward with more an improved Smith Field. I think that it's really important for our community to have more fields available, because there's really been just a horrible shortage of fields for our kids to play sports on. I also feel that we have a shortage of courts for people to recreate on. That's tennis courts, that's volleyball courts, and potentially pickleball courts. And I know that this project is phased. I am not sure if that element of some type of court is still incorporated into this project, but when it was shown to the public at previous times, that aspect of the project was really, really interesting to me because of the broader spectrum of age groups that it covered, and just allowing for more recreational opportunities for everyone. I think these things are real community builders, as evidenced by things like our beach volleyball courts that we now have down at the beach part of the year, when the tides allow, are really seeing heavy use. And we need more things like that that bring our community together. And so I just hope that when we look at this phased project, that we're really considering all of the different opportunities that we have to provide recreational opportunities for the younger kids, but also our teenagers, our older young adults, and our adults, because we just don't have that in Half Moon Bay, and we rely far too heavily on fields that are just controlled by the schools. And I feel that the city needs to have its own additional fields that are more easily accessible. So thank you.
Thank you.
We have no further public comment.
I'll close public comments and ask for clarifying questions from the commissioners. Chair Hernandez?
Did we evaluate an opportunity to find another location for Smithfield? I know that's something that's been brought up in the past. This is not the perfect location for a ballpark, and if you do everything from scratch, you might find someplace else. Is that something that was evaluated as part of this process?
It's on, right? Okay. Hi, everyone. Maz Mazraginia, Public Works Director, City Engineer. No, as part of our project and the master plan adoption, it was not a consideration to look at other locations. We do have limited resources as far as real estate as well as financing, so that wasn't something that we looked at this point, unfortunately. Not to say that it isn't an opportunity to look at additional fields in the future when land becomes available and funding is available.
And then just a second question, which is an observation. Is there a reason why the new dog park doesn't have some kind of trees or other type of protective areas there? It seems like a big open space, and it's nice to have a shady spot to sit in when you're outside with your doggo.
Appreciate the comment. I think we're looking for that kind of feedback, so that's actually perfect. Thank you for providing that. We're really looking to get that information from the Planning Commission and community members and look at incorporating these comments into the project design. So that's a great one to add.
And is there a space for volleyball courts, pickleball courts, things like that in this design?
Well, so we are, as part of our overall project, we are looking at Field 3 as being a multi-use. So that from that programmatic perspective, no decisions have been finalized or made. And as we phase this project through, that'll be part of the consideration that we'll be bringing back to bodies like the Planning Commission, Parks and Rec, City Council, obviously, ultimately, that we will be getting more feedback from as we get to those phases of the project. So it's not part of the improvements that we see coming forward soon. But again, it's not anything that we're not planning for. Our environmental document is looking at the impacts of the project. And so the most impactful is what we're going to be looking at as part of the environmental review. And so it does not preclude us from looking at that from a programmatic standpoint. But there's no decision that's being made yet.
Any further?
I don't have any other.
Commissioner Gordon?
Hi, I just had two quick questions that I'm not clear on. One is you were very specific about the trees, 231 trees, but not specific about how many are being cut for that one little area. Do you have that number? Just curious.
We don't, only because the plans will continue to be refined as we're going through the process. I mean, one could look at that exhibit and kind of count what's in the parking lot right of way. And I think that is somewhere in the neighborhood of 17 to 20.
Okay. It looked like they were more along that farther side, not where the parking lot is, but the sort of the newer area. Is that right? Yeah. Sort of the area past the parking lot.
Those
Is that right?
are, depending on, again, kind of what shifts around in terms of the improvements that are being proposed.
Okay.
It is expected that kind of like all the clustered clumps
Yeah.
that we're showing up there will continue
Yeah.
to stay
Okay.
in the park. It's primarily the ones that are in hardscape areas, so the parking lot and drive aisles that will clearly need to be clearly need to be removed.
So it also seems like the footprint for what is already existing and what's planned are almost identical. I'm wondering sort of how much is a new area? Like how much is beyond the current footprint? Is that something you can tell me?
Let's see. We can look at the concept park plan. So again, the 5 fields are there now. Field 3 will obviously shift and morph. And then it's really the areas that are to the east, the small and large dog park, and then the large light green area, which is the nature trail. So that is the features that will be new and expansion of this park footprint. I don't know what the acreage of those are.
Okay. Because I think where the dog parks are, there actually is something there right now. But, okay. So,
Yeah, the horseshoe pit is
yeah, right in there.
are a little bit, the horseshoe pit and the existing dog park are a little tighter to the field there. And so it's really kind of, the park is expanding to the east.
Okay. That's a good shot. Thank you.
Commissioner Johannes?
Yes, I have questions about, well, new ones came up, and since you brought up some questions, Commissioner. But I have questions about the drainage. Specifically, I walked that area also, and this last winter, it was quite wet, and I noticed on Wavecrest Road, there was significant amount of water that was coming from across Highway 1, flowing into that water course or ditch. And it took out several trees in that specific area, and the flow seemed pretty high. And then they flowed through I guess, the point where it's the entry point, and then I guess it veers to the south, right? It goes to the south. But the ball fields and the parking lots was very wet, and I'm wondering if there has been studies already showing what the flows are and, you know, how that's going to be controlled once the parking lot gets paved. I'm concerned that the parking lot is going to get taken from a pervious to an impervious material, and just wanted to know how the drainage is going to work in those areas, and how that drainage ties into the bigger stormwater master plan.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. We spoke earlier today, and I actually misspoke. This project is above, this does require hydromodification, so we will be going through this more formal process of reviewing. We definitely have different considerations to look at, and we'll have our consultant, Lorraine, to come and speak a little bit on that matter too. But what I'd like to say is that we are considering, you know, the different alternatives as far as materials and different treatments. As part of this feedback, we're going to look at refining our numbers and doing a more detailed analysis. And one thing I want to just comment on, and it's something that we should consider and discuss more, is the pervious versus impervious. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is for the parking lot areas, you know, they're not all pervious areas are created equally. We do have different infiltration rates based on compaction and different site constraints. And so for parking lots, when you want to have a higher compaction because you're going to have vehicle loads or driving on it, you're not going to get the same level of infiltration as you would in other you know, in like a walking space if you did something that's, you know, a pervious paver or something like that. But again, we'll look at it and consider it as part of that impact. And so what I would say is on the parking lot side, it may be challenging for us to be able to do something pervious that would actually drain the way that it should be, without compromising the strength of the street section. Something for us to definitely consider and look into, and I don't know if Lorraine, you have anything else you want to add on that part of it?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lorraine Tu with Brian Loretta, the civil engineer on the project. So just backing up here a little bit, looking at the overall drainage of the site, we know that it currently tends to drain from southeastwardly to northwesterly, with the low point being more on the Wave Crest entrance, the high point being there, and then you'll see it taper down towards the west, towards the western boundary. And so in looking at the design grades, we're trying to keep that same direction of flow, so to speak. And I agree with Maz with respect to how that gravel pavement is now almost considered impervious, in that it had to go through a certain compaction in order to support the load of vehicles that are parked there, and it continues to do so as vehicles do come through. There are pros and cons with pervious pavement. I've used them in other projects, and we just, you know, we want to try and stay away as much as possible for places where we do have utilities that would be in the road that may need future maintenance, because that would mean in the future we'd need to cut into the pervious pavement, which could, you know, tend to be, it couldn't be replaced for kind. You'll have a different shade perhaps of the pervious concrete, and you'll have patchwork if there ever is work to come in years down the road, so to speak. Sorry about the pun. But yeah, there's definitely you know, other LID measures that we can explore in this. We were looking at collecting and then placing into bioretention, for instance. There are other things like CDS units, so it's still things that we're trying to iron out here as we're looking at the overall drainage of the site.
I was just hoping that we could look into traffic-rated pavers for those kinds of things. And there's several different kinds of pavers that can be used. And then you can use the bioswales and things like that. Yes, the compaction is, I think, an issue, but is there also a way to use, I guess it would be storage chambers in some areas
Certainly.
versus other things, so that it's not all flowing into that open space, and, you know, is it okay to drain water from a public property to private property?
Not
That's-
without an easement.
Yeah, so this is what my concern is this drainage that goes in there. And I also noted that when I walked that area, yes, everything drains west, and it drains west fast, and it eroded a lot of the bluff tops over at Wave Crest. I don't know if you guys walked all that way, but there's major
Commissioner, I'm
erosion.
sorry to interrupt you, but can we hold to clarifying questions
okay, sure.
before we get to
Sure.
deliberations?
Oh, okay. I was just wondering if the pavers could be used. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I mean, again, all the comments we're hearing tonight, we're going to consider as part of that when we bring this project back to the planning commission.
Thank you.
Of course.
Do you have more clarifying questions?
The trees that were going to be, that was one of the questions, and I didn't know if you had a count on the eucalyptus trees, and would they be the ones that would be removed, which I think there are some eucalyptus trees in those areas, but I didn't know if those were the ones that were most likely going to be removed.
The 17 to 20 trees that appear to be in the kind of the drive aisle parking lot area, I don't know the specific species of those. My recollection is it was kind of ran the gamut. There were some of the pines, cypress, as well as eucalyptus.
And the reason why I asked that is because if there are some pines and I guess cypress pines that are going to be removed, I know, and I don't know how important this is for the biology or the environmental part of it. There's coral mushrooms and elfin saddle mushrooms that I've found in that area, and I don't know how significant they are with regards to the other mycorrhizal type plants that are there and what they contribute to the whole ecosystem in that area. So I just thought I could, if that's something we can look into, the mycorrhizal and the symbiotic relationship with that. That's it.
Thank you. I have a couple of clarifying questions. In following up on former Mayor Ferrera's question, does the plan anticipate using artificial surfaces on any of these fields?
I can comment on that. I know there was a lot of concerns with that through the master planning phase. I don't know if we are looking at that currently as part of the options. Although there is maintenance benefits and cost benefits to going with artificial, I think we've heard a lot from the community with regards to concerns about those artificial items. And again, as part of the first phase, we're not really looking at any of the field modifications, but I think long-term, that's something that still is out there as a potential. I don't know if we've closed the door one way or the other, but again, it'll be a programmatic consideration when we come forward with those newer phases. But we've certainly heard a lot from folks, a lot of concerns with injuries. I tore my ACL in a turf field. Kind of have PTSD myself.
I'm sorry to hear that. My other question is, at this stage of planning, do you envision details about the nature trail and what exactly that would be and what the maintenance costs for that would be?
As far as, I would say as far as the way that the project plans are being developed, we're looking at close to 35% as far as the CDP for the full project. Knowing again that there's going to be some potential programmatic questions and changes when we get to those other future phases. But the phase one, which is the majority of the drainage, the water line, the parking lot area, that is what we will be going to full design. So we'll have a good understanding of all that, but I think it will still leave some room for modifications of the other phases in the future.
So if I understand you, Maz, today no one can say whether the nature trail would be a dirt path or a boardwalk or
I think we'll have that, we're going to have that level of options, but it won't be, you know, it's not going to, we're not going to have construction level details on those.
Great, thank you. Well, if there are no further clarifying questions, we could move to, sorry,
Through the chair.
Chair Hernandez, please.
I'm curious, why are we making, I know it's important to phase these things, but why are we making playgrounds a priority over courts, new courts? We already have many city playgrounds, but we don't have any tennis courts. We don't have any, we have one volleyball court. We don't have an outdoor public pickleball court. Why are we thinking about the playground as a priority versus some of these other things?
We moved into pointed clarifying questions.
Yeah, no, that's a good comment. I think we'll definitely consider that. But again, I think the initial phase, we weren't looking at doing the playground areas. We were really looking at the parking lot, the maintenance access point, the infrastructure necessary for current fire codes. That's really what we're looking at as far as the initial phase. But I totally understand the long-term concerns, and I think we can evaluate that phasing potentially. You know, none of this is set in stone. We can take a closer look at the phasing of this as funds become available and as grant sources become available. But yeah, as part of the first phase, we're really looking at taking care of the infrastructure, access, ADA considerations, and then we can take another look at phasing and, again, which ones we move forward that's subject to community input.
Thank you.
Any further clarifying questions? Well, who would like to open deliberations? Commissioner Gorn?
Thank you. Maz, can you walk me through sort of what precautions you're taking in the construction of the parking lot? The phase one's going to go first. I assume that's going to be next year. Is that right?
Hopefully.
Okay. And so obviously there's, there's wetlands right next to that parking lot. And so I understand that you're going to try to keep them separate, but in the construction, how do you do that? Can you explain?
No, that's a very good comment. For construction purposes, you know, for wetland delineation, you're talking about construction fencing, staking, making sure that the project area does not encroach into other areas. So as far as that, there's going to be specific elements that will be built into the bidding for the advertisement for construction, and that will cover site measure requirements. The biological oversight will be something that we are used to on a construction project, so biomonitor reporting, all of that will be part of it.
Thanks.
Anything further? Commissioner Johannes, with deliberations?
Well, I was asking about the drainage and the erosion of the bluffs and whether, you know, this project in its final phase and in the first phase affect, you know, additional water flowing in there and additional volume of water going in there, and how, and what effect would it have on that erosion at the bluff top? So I don't know if that's something you guys can look into further, or if you already have that answer.
What I can say is, so we definitely, from the project perspective and the hydro modification requirements, we're going to look at making sure this doesn't have any adverse impacts, obviously. That's first and foremost. But as far as this project being able to mitigate other concerns and take on, you know, floods, higher intensities of stormwater from other areas, that's going to be something that's going to be tough. I think we'll look at that as part of the potential. Again, you use you look at parks as being a potential retention space for large rain events. People aren't really going to be playing when it's pouring out there. So we'll look at that as far as potential capacity, but we also know that the watershed is this one's a pretty lively one, and we do get pretty intense rainfall, and where that watershed is, it goes, across Highway 1 and into the hillsides. So I think we have a larger stormwater master plan review that we're undertaking with looking at watersheds. So that'll be part of it, is looking at this area, working with our stakeholders on the Wavecrest parcel, and looking at opportunities to create those retention areas upstream. So from the perspective of this project, it's going to be self-mitigating. That's the goal. But any additional improvements we can make to quality, we will certainly look at. It's going to be difficult just because of the quantity that we get to be able to achieve anything major as far as reduction. But we will certainly be looking at those as part of our analysis.
And with regard to the nature trail, I did want to find out a little bit more about what that would look like, and the concept behind that is it's a nature trail. Obviously, are they going to be like little boards that describe, what they're walking through? I mean, is it a nature trail that's for the coastline? What is this nature trail? Is it wildlife? Is it wetlands nature trail? What is it going to highlight?
So the purpose of the nature trail, so you saw on the previous map of the impacts on the site, right? Impacts by wetlands and the area that we're currently developed in, and so how we can grow the park and grow usage, which was ultimately the goal in this facilities master plan. And so what we saw on kind of this right side was an opportunity to get people, again, I'm going to use into the wetlands without being into the wetlands, so near them. So it's not going to go into the wetlands. We also want to be really thoughtful about not increasing usage so much that we are inviting damage or, extra, a lot of people into that, because we do want to be very sensitive to those areas. So this is intended to be low impact, right? So we're probably talking a dirt trail. And then, the green in between are native plantings, if anything, hydroseed. We would work with SWCA on plantings that are appropriate for this area, because kind of the green area we've highlighted in between is not a wetland. So we want to be thoughtful about what we're planting there, that we're not planting competing species and things like that. We had intended for educational signage to be, kind of stay out, be kind, but look at what you can see here. We know nature watching out here is fabulous. People come out to photograph. We talk to numerous photographers, people who come to watch. Bird watching is, just absolutely wonderful out here. So we wanted to provide more opportunity for that without creating such an intense use that we're potentially damaging or bringing harm to the.
That sounds good. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Chair Hernandez?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to city staff and the folks who put this proposal together, Parks and Rec, for a long time getting us to this point. And it's so awesome to have members of the community who are willing to fund a project like this, or parts of a project like this. So I feel very grateful. I have been one of those people who have made the pointed statement of, man, it'd be great if we could find a better location for a park. That's out of scope for this project, is what I've heard, and I think that's a reasonable position. We can't make perfect the enemy of good, and so I think, there's an opportunity here to create more common spaces for recreating, especially for teenagers who don't have enough of those kinds of spaces in our community. Really want to see more courts for adults and kids. I don't want barbecue pits there, but it would be great if we had, and I don't see plans for that, but it'd be great if we had, going back to the theme we were talking about earlier, it's nice to have places where we can pause. So think about benches, think about picnic tables, think about where do we put our bikes. I think those are important design considerations. If you're in a dog park, if you've ever been to a dog park, you want a place to sit while your dog runs around, and many people enjoy something like that. So, and landscaping plans that give you some shade, give your dogs some shade, I think are very helpful. And, you know, I'm just grateful that we have this project in front of us. And, you know, I think I'm concerned, as I think Commissioner Joannis has expressed this, and I'll just state it explicitly, drainage is an issue. Drainage is not going to get better unless we take proactive steps to help it. If there's opportunities to put in bioswales, appropriate plants, and be very conservative in how we approach this site so that we don't increase erosion. And I've heard Maz, I've heard you say basically we're going to be careful. I just want to reiterate the point of we really need to be careful here because drainage issues generally on this area are only going to get worse over time. And there's nothing, so whatever we can do to help with that would be greatly appreciated. I think the ideas of pavers are interesting, worth taking a look at. I know it adds to the cost of the project. I also think I understand that the bunkers and the weird radar station remnants aren't considered historic artifacts or historically significant artifacts. I do think there's a little bit of an opportunity missed there by not incorporating that into the design or having something that calls that out. You know, we have the artillery station that's on Kelly that's falling into the ocean. We have the bunker in Pacifica that is, you know, falling apart. There are some interesting artifacts from a historical perspective. It'd be great if we could think about designs that at least call that out, mention it, maybe have photographs as part of the interpretive trail. It's an opportunity. But love the progress. Thank you for doing this. I'm very pleased to see the direction that this is going in. Volleyball courts, pickleball courts, adults and kids, we need more places that the city owns for people to recreate.
Thank you, Chair Hernandez. I'd like to express kudos to the planning team for a couple of things. The attention to minimizing the number of trees that will have to be removed, I think, is obviously the way to go. The commitment to dark skies compatible lighting on Field 3, I think, is a big step forward. I do have concerns about a couple of things here, though. You know, I was a Little League dad and coach and manager for a lot of years when my sons were younger. And I remember that St. Patrick's Day was always the traditional start of Little League season. As you probably know, with their atmospheric river storms of the first 3 months of this year, those fields were unusable in the middle of March. And I don't know when they dried out enough to be usable. I'd be curious to know, but it was a problem. And, you know, we can't be blind to the fact that the way our climate is trending, that we may see more winters and springs like that. I guess it's up to the City Council whether we want to make this kind of an investment in this site, which contains wetlands and contains a lot of acreage that maybe not technically wetlands is still awfully wet. I know those fields are awfully wet. I also walk out in Wavecrest to the south and west of Smithfield on a several times a week basis. The parking lot gets wet. It's a wet place, but I don't think that we've come up with a realistic alternative. And if City Council chooses to invest this money in this, then that's their prerogative. I'm very concerned about the concept of going to an impervious parking lot surface. Imperfect as the current one is, I think you're going to find a very expensive and difficult grading and drainage project ahead of you if you're going to do something meaningful with the runoff from an impervious surface of all those parking lots. I'll be very curious to see what that drainage plan ends up being. My last comment is delete the nature trail from this plan. It's not a good idea. To the west of Smithfield, there are miles of world-class trails that will be 100 times better than the nature trail. And the first time you have to pay to have that thing weed whacked in the spring, so people can walk among the bristly oxtongue and the other invasive plants, you'll regret having built it. So save the money from the nature trail for the grading and drainage. Sorry if that seems harsh, but I know those trails and I know that area out there, and I feel strongly about it.
I would say the drainage west of the baseball fields was a swamp. It was a total swamp. You couldn't even walk out there. But the fields themselves, even after that opening day disaster, they were using the fields within about 3 days. And,
Did
and
they
the
open in
parking lot-
mid-March?
Yeah. they
Okay.
did. And then
Well, I
the-
apologize if I misspoke on that.
Well, no, but then, the parking lot, I expected to turn into mud, but it didn't. And it you know, I think that speaks to the
Compaction.
the compaction and impervious nature of that. I did also wonder about the nature trail. I know it's like far in advance and you guys are going to do it phase 3 or whatever, but I didn't really see the need for it, but it's a policy. Like, I get that it's a policy thing, but that's all. Thanks.
Yeah, I can't imagine somebody wanting to take the nature trail rather than the wave crest paths, but that's all I'll say about it. Is there anything?
I agree with you, Steve. I think take it out. You have world-class trails, world-class walking. Spend the money on courts and court improvements and amenities that are directly related to recreating in an active way. We have plenty of places to walk.
Well, you asked for our feedback. Is there anything else that we can do that would be helpful to staff at this stage of the project?
I think we received quite a bit of feedback, which we really appreciate. I think this has been really helpful, I know for me, and I think for the rest of the team. So thank you so much for this opportunity and the feedback, and we'll take this. We're going to be going to the Planning Commission, or Parks and Rec Commission soon, so that'll be part of the agenda going out. So there'll be an additional opportunity for the community to comment, as well as the Parks and Rec Commission to take a look at this plan and provide their comments before we start really making modifications. So appreciate your time and thank you for the feedback.
Thank you for everything. The hour of the minutes.
There's just a point, there's a little grammatical issue on the minutes, but I don't have them in front of me. Let me just pull it up real quick. Just if you can tighten up what we sign, I think you'll see it once you look at it, but I don't have any other comments on the minutes other than just fix the grammatical issues.
Okay, I could talk to you afterwards about it.
I'll text you.
Which minutes did you want us to consider, Bridget?
Okay, so we have 2 sets of minutes out of which will be 5 next time. Well, there'll be 3 next time. So to help matters, let's start with June 13th, 2023. I'll make it easier for you that Commissioners Hernandez, Gorn, and Reddick can vote. Johannes was absent on that meeting, just to help for who's here and there. So I just need a motion and a second, and then we can vote.
So moved.
I'll second.
Commissioner Hernandez,
Yes.
Commissioner Gorn,
Yes, please.
and Commissioner Reddick.
Yes.
Okay. Next minutes are July 11th, 2023. Again, I will help. Commissioner Reddick was absent at that meeting, so he would abstain. Commissioner Gossett is not at this meeting, so it leaves the 3 following commissioners, Gorn, Johannes, and Hernandez, to have a motion and a second.
So moved.
Okay. Commissioner Gorn
Second.
and Hernandez second. Commissioner Hernandez,
Yes.
Commissioner Johannes,
Yes.
and Commissioner Gorn.
Yes, please.
Motion approved. Thank you, or motion, minutes approved, for both the 13th of June and the 11th of July. So thank you.
Yes.
And now I'll pass this
It brings
along.
us to director's report,
Yeah.
I believe.
Thank you all very much. It's late now, so I will just be quick. Your next meeting is in 2 weeks, September 26th. Announced this at your last meeting, but you will have a study session on the safety element. That is one of the mandatory elements of the general plan. And the city engineering staff is also coming forward with a coastal development permit amendment to a portion of the Poplar Complete Streets project. On October 10th, and I believe this was alluded to tonight by the city engineer, they're planning to bring you an update on the stormwater master plan. They will be bringing the consultants who are under contract, and they will welcome your comments and questions. The consultants have been, they've already started their field work. We would expect to have some usable data for both Roosevelt and Pullman water courses by the end of the year, and that will be followed up by Kehoe and Seymour. And so we know that you are very interested in this topic, and we're really glad that the city engineer is able to bring that forward to you on the 10th. We may have other agenda items if they are ready. I'm not going to go over the Architectural Advisory Committee, just to say that it was so nice to have them here tonight. They are meeting again this week at their regularly scheduled meeting. They have 3 items, and we are, I really don't have other updates at this time. We'll catch up with you on the housing element pretty soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Ekus. Do any planning commissioners have communications? If not, may we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Commissioner, it's going to be in all different order here. Commissioner Reddick,
Yes.
Commissioner Gorn,
Yes, please.
Commissioner Hernandez,
Yes.
and Commissioner Johannes.
Yes.
All right, meeting adjourned. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you all.